The 12th of February 2024, and this meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel. I don't think we have any. The first item on the agenda is apologies. I don't think we have any apologies now, do we?
No, no apologies.
No. Okay, and declarations of interest. So I will start that on item 4 on the CRF funding. I have a conflict of interest. I am past president of Canusie Camera Club, so I will be leaving the meeting when that application is discussed. And also a transparency statement. I have either given letter of support or had chats with Newtonmore Play Park upgrade, Canusie Tennis Club, and Glebe Ponds Canusie. So that's a transparency statement for those three. Do we have any other conflicts of interest? Okay. So we're moving on to item 4. We're going to take that next. I think that's Lewis. So I will leave the meeting, hand over the chair to whoever the committee decide to hand the chair over to, and if you give me a ring to come back in, Lewis, if that's suited. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You'll need to have a proposal for who's chair.
I propose Bill.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, in that case, then we're in item 4, the Community Regeneration Fund assessment of application, and I would propose handing over to Alison to run us through those. So, Alison.
Great, thank you. Good morning, and thank you for your time this morning to discuss the Community Regeneration Funding applications for Badenoch and Strathspey. As a reminder, the Community Regeneration Fund is used as an umbrella term to cover several funds which we distribute all across Highlands, comprises Scottish Government funding streams, but also some of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. In summary, there are 6 applications today for consideration which total £127,314. And Badenoch and Strathspey has an available funding budget of £223,792. Therefore, there is sufficient funding available should members wish to agree the recommendations to approve all of the applications that are in front of you today. So the report outlines that members are asked to consider the applications present and agree whether to approve, defer or reject the applications. And the approval of funding will detail the amount approved and outline any conditions that we've put against it during our own assessment, and any conditions that the members wish to attach to any of the applications. A deferral would allow an application to come back with further information at a future date, but a rejection would mean that an application would not proceed and any new application would have to come forward as a new expression of interest. So what we're asking today is that you approve the Community Regeneration Grant Award for each application up to the available area allocation. We've also got a proposal on the table to agree to ring fence an allocation of £80,000 community regeneration funding from the current 2023 to 24 budget towards a member identified project at Glenmore to refurbish the pedestrian link there. And that application is subject to a full application coming forward to you yourselves at a future date. If there is a balance remaining of the funding, we're looking that you would, excuse me, that we would retain that to cover any other projects which you've identified as priority projects in your area. So in advance of the meeting, you should have received all of the application forms, including a spreadsheet which shows the RAG, red, green, amber allocations against it. I would note that the red, amber, green classification is undertaken based on the information that we've had at the time of application, and that where a project has been awarded a red or amber allocation, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not eligible for funding. It's just that maybe some aspects of the application which are missing or were not available at the time of application. Quite often this refers to things like match funding. So I don't know whether you want me just to have a run through the first project that we've.
No, I think actually we need to consider the Kingussie Camanachd Club in isolation.
Yeah.
So if
So
you would run through the Kingussie Camanachd Club one,
Yeah,
please.
so the first application we're looking at is Kingussie Camanachd Club, which we have a reference number of 2290 against. This is for upgrading the market stance playing field, restoring the market playing surface, and installing floodlighting to allow the facility to be used year-round for local community groups. The total project cost there is £71,837, and of which a grant is requested of £15,000. There are no outstanding issues for this project in terms of eligibility, and we would recommend that for approval today.
Members, any comment? I think this is the final stage of previous applications whereby a huge amount of work was done by the Camanachd Association in the market stance area. I think it's a good application, and what's particularly impressive is that the amount that they managed to raise by themselves. So I would propose that we approve this application, and I'm looking for a seconder. Muriel. Okay, that's agreed then, members. Lewis, can we call Russell back in?
Thank you, Chair. Just give me 2 moments and I'll give him a call.
I'll hand the chair back over to Russell when he comes back. Russell, that has completed the first application for Kingussie Camanachd Club, so I'll hand the chair back over to you.
Thank you very much. So moving on to the next item, Alison, have you been taking us through these, or how have we been working it?
Yeah, so we took the Camanachd Club first, so we're just going to work down the list in sort of numerical order from following on from that. So the second application to look at is the reference number is 2154 for Newtonmore Play Park upgrade. So this is the upgrade of Newtonmore Play Park. It's an ambitious project led by the community to replace outdated and well used but outdated and not fit for purpose play equipment in Newtonmore. Total project cost here is 130,000, of which a grant is requested of 30,000 towards this. Again, the community have done a number of fundraising activities and have raised some of the money themselves. The outstanding queries on this one really do relate to things like match funding and what have you. But apart from that, there's no technical reasons why this project shouldn't proceed, so we would recommend that one for approval.
Members, what's your thoughts?
I approve. I'd like to propose approval.
Okay,
I approve.
Okay, happy with that.
I think that's all 4 of us, Alison. Thank you.
Okay, good. The next one is reference number 2204, Kingussie Tennis Club for the Phase 3 upgrade. This is a community managed project now. I think recently took over the community, the tennis club took over the facility. And this application relates to the upgrade of the Blaze playing surface and an irrigation system to maintain that. It's in terms of Phase 3, they have done a lot of work up until this point, and this is the sort of final piece of the jigsaw to make this project more sustainable going forward. So the total project cost for this one is 23,500, and a grant is requested of 17,500. I would just say that we have had an application from the tennis club for a further additional £360 on top of what they've originally requested. This is because the work was retendered, or not retendered, but the project costs were updated because they were originally got the costs for this about 6 months ago, and the company, the preferred bidder, has said that the project costs have gone up. So they would be looking for the 17,500 plus an additional £360. But apart from that, there's no other issues outstanding with this one, and we would recommend it for approval.
Members, what's their thoughts? John? Bill?
Sounds very reasonable. Inflationary times we're living in.
I'm not opposed to it.
Muriel?
Yep.
Okay, I think
Good
that's
to
all
go.
4 of us. Again, Alison, thank you.
Good. Moving on, reference number 2211, Dalwhinnie Community Development Trust for a project to regenerate the village hall. This is a well-used hall in Dalwhinnie. It's used by the local public. It's also used as a I'm not entirely sure, emergency resilience centre, or I can't remember exactly the terminology, but it's used if there's an emergency or a flood or something happening. This is an application to insulate the hall and replace the existing lighting and heating with a low carbon energy system. The total costs for this one are £62,718.80, and they're looking for a grant of £27,718.80. The outstanding issues for this one really relate to match funding, which they've applied from LNER. It's quite a large community fund that they've put in for that. So they're just waiting for the outcome of that. But apart from that, there are no outstanding issues, and I would recommend this one for approval.
Councillor Loban?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to approve this, subject to the match funding becoming available, and that's quite important.
I second that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that. Is that possible to do then, Alison?
Yeah,
so
I
we
would
can, subject to them acquiring the match funding.
I think it's probably worth just pausing to say that that is generally a condition on all of these applications, that if there's any of them with match funding outstanding, or that we would want to see evidence of that as part of the grant award letter, as part of the conditions that they would need to provide us with information on that. We've also, for the first time in this round, we will be putting a time limit on the grant offer letters, so basically they have to provide that information within a certain time period, or else it would probably come back to you in your May committee just for consideration whether or not you want to continue supporting it, if they haven't been able to do that by the time of your next area committee, just so that projects aren't sitting with money ring fenced against them if they can't proceed. But hopefully that doesn't apply to any of these ones. The next one we want to look at is project number 2280, King Eustace and Vicinity Community Council for the regeneration of the Glebe Pond paths. Difficult to say that. So the aim of the third phase is to upgrade 500 metres of path network, including the access to this pond network. It's, from the application, you'll note that there's been an awful lot of community support for this, and in terms of volunteers to do some of the earlier phased work. And this part of the project will allow those with small children, parents with prams, people with mobility aids, wheelchairs, etc., to use the facility more widely. Excuse me. The total cost of this one is £41,095.56, and they are looking for a grant of £31,095.60. And we would recommend this one for approval.
Yep, I approve this one.
Me too.
Okay, John, I think that's 4 of us again, Alison. Thank you.
Good.
Russell, before we go into the last one, I think I would be better to lodge a late transparency statement. I can't actually remember speaking to the community orchard development people, but probably over the last couple of years I must have done. So I would lodge a transparency statement. I'm not going to leave.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Yeah, so the last one is Carbridge Community Orchard, reference number 2288 for phase 2 developments at the community orchard. This application is part of an ongoing project to make the orchard more accessible and enjoyable and educational by upgrading the path network so that you can take wheelchairs or pushchairs into the orchard. Some seating and some notice boards and information panels about the growing project that's there. Again, it seems to be well supported. Total project cost is £8,250 and they're looking for a grant of £6,000 and we would recommend this one for approval.
Yep. Can I propose I approve this one?
Yeah, I'm happy with this one too.
Sounds a good one. Yes.
I think it's 4 of us again, Alison. Thank you.
Good. So where that leaves us is we would other project on the table is to agree the ring fencing of the allocation of £80,000 towards the community regeneration funded project, the pedestrian link at Glenmore. And this is subject to a full application coming back to yourselves earlier to an early meeting at a future committee. I think it really is. I think just have to note whether or not you agree to approve that.
I fully support this, so I would be happy to we did that.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah. Good. Well, I think just to sum up, so that in terms of if after all the agreements to approve today, we have a total of £207,674.40 for all 6 applications, plus the ring fencing of £80,000 towards the Glenmore project and an additional £360 towards the Kingussie Tennis Club. This leaves a remaining balance for Badenoch and Strathspey of £16,118.04. And I would recommend that you ring fence the remaining grant within 2023 to 24 to deliver any further area identified projects that you want to bring forward or encourage to come forward for this remaining fund.
Yes, I think we all agree with that, Alison. Thank you very much.
Good. So thank you for your time this morning, and we will let people know.
No,
Thanks,
thank you,
Alison.
Alison. And thank you for all the work on it. That's been great. Thank you very much.
Okay, and
Thank you.
just in case you didn't notice, there was a message from Fiona to say that she's hurt her back. That's why she's kind of lurking in the background, but she is. That's why she's not showing her face today.
Get well soon, Fiona.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Bye just now.
Bye.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on, I think I saw Craig coming back in there. Thank you very much. So we'll move to agenda item 3, and it's a police performance report, and it's introduced by Inspector Johnston. Thank you very much.
Morning, Chair. Morning, Councillors. Good to see you all and to be able to answer any questions you may have on the report, which I believe I sent you a couple of weeks ago. My intention is to go over a couple of the standout statistics from my perspective, and obviously give you the opportunity to ask questions about any aspect of the report. I appreciate the format of the report's changed slightly since the previous meeting, so I'm also interested to get your feedback on that. Given the changes to the report format, I thought it more appropriate to give you the opportunity to ask questions rather than me to go through every single detail contained within it. Firstly, however, I'll go through a couple of, I think it's worthy of highlighting the continued increase in the number of speeding offences which are being detected in our area, and specifically on the A9. This continues to be a priority for us, and a significant number of resources are being dedicated to dealing with this area of policing. You'll hopefully have noticed yourselves on the A9 the increased presence of local officers, roads policing officers, and the camera safety unit targeting speeding motorists. This of course falls into the ongoing Operation Cedar, which is challenge, educate, detect and reduce, which aims to reduce the number of people killed or seriously injured on our roads. You may also have noticed that the number of mobile phone offences have increased sharply. I don't believe that the number of people using phones has increased, but rather this is a reflection of the increased police presence on our roads. It's actually very challenging for the police to see somebody from a marked vehicle using their phone, because the offender can obviously see the police coming from a considerable distance away. So this, I think, reflects the efforts that we're going to in that regard. Something else I was going to highlight that stands out in the report, to me at least, is that you may have noticed that the number of shopliftings have increased significantly over the reporting period. And although there has been a slight increase in Badenoch and Strathspey, indeed there were 2 shopliftings in Home Bargains and Aviemore over the course of the weekend, I can confirm that it's not that our area has not been affected to the extent of other areas in South Highland which are included in the report. The large increase is largely down to one specific town and one specific store within that town, and there's a lot of work going on to engage with that store to try and deal with that particular issue. As detailed as well, there's been an increase in the number of assaults and serious assaults, and there's mention of a murder, but I can confirm that that did not happen in the Badenoch Strathspey area. I'm pleased to report that the number of drug detections have increased during the reporting period, and indeed there was a recovery of drugs in Badenoch Strathspey this weekend. In respect of tackling drugs, we plan to have a month-long campaign in March specifically designed to increase proactivity during which we'll have an increased staffing profile, and we'll be working with various partners to tackle drugs issues. That will be proactively advertised in our local media, and that will be in addition to the work that we already try to do in respect of that area of policing, and hopefully we will increase the positive outcomes that we have in that regard. I appreciate you're likely to have questions for me, and obviously happy to answer any questions that you've got. Sorry, Councillor Oban, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Inspector Johnson. I suppose the rise in speeding offences or detected speeding offences on the A9 is quite concerning. But local communities are far more interested in speeding in their towns and villages. So what efforts are being made to enforce the new 20 mph speed limits? And I have a couple other questions.
So the 20 mph speed limits, and it's quite clear for most of us going about our daily business, are disregarded fairly regularly. So it's the 20 mph are being dealt with largely by the council in terms of how they are signposting roads and so on. There are difficulties, and I can get back to you with the specifics of those in terms of enforcement of the 20 mph speed limits, largely because we are focusing so much resources on the A9 and around reducing the number of casualties on those higher speed roads, because when accidents occur on those higher speeds, they're likely to have a higher impact. So we can enforce the 20 mph speed limits, but it's because so much of our efforts are being dedicated to dealing with higher impact collisions and the effects that those have.
So I can take it from that basically there is more emphasis on Scottish Government requirements to reduce speeding on the A9 than there are in local communities, because the difference between a child being struck at 20 mph and being struck at 30 mph is huge and can be catastrophic. So I firmly believe that some resource should be put forward to to try and bring speeds down to the 20 mile an hour limit required. We went to all the effort of introducing 20 mile an hour speed limits for the right reason, and they need to be enforced. And if they're not seen to be enforced, then the speeds will begin to creep back up again. My other question is it goes back a wee bit to before Christmas. It's about the incident whereby 250 motorists were stuck on the A9 between the snow gates. What I'd like to understand is why the snow gates weren't closed early enough, and therefore, instead of having 250 vehicles shut, you'd maybe had 20 or 30 or 50, but you probably wouldn't have had 250. I'm quite concerned that they were not shutting the snow gates appropriately.
Okay, so I wasn't on that day, but I was very recently at a debrief regarding that incident, so I do have an awareness of the thought processes behind that, and there were several factors at play. There's this maybe goes against the grain slightly, but there's evidence to show that when there are more vehicles on a road, it will become more usable because those vehicles will make the road passable. However, there's various factors that have to be balanced in there. There was significant media campaign around that time in the lead up to the event to advise the public do not travel, and there were regular meetings being held with the Met Office and various other partners to decide, along with officers on the ground, whether the road should be closed or not. Yet there is absolutely an argument that it could have and should have been closed earlier, but taking into account the advice from the Met Office, the advice from our roads policing unit, and the information being taken into the group coordinating that major incident, it was allowed to be opened, and I appreciate there's arguments for and against, but with the significant media campaign, it was hoped that that would have a reduction in the number of people travelling on the road at that time, which it didn't, and resulted in the number of vehicles stuck that you highlight, Councillor.
Councillor Jones, can I come back in again?
Yeah, certainly, Councillor Levin.
Inspector Johnson, where is the decision taken? Is it taken locally, or is it taken somewhere in the central belt? Or
it's taken locally. So there was a ELG called that day, which when I came on duty 3 o'clock that afternoon, there were 60 partners involved in that meeting, from Care for People to the police, to all manner of different agencies, SEPA, Met Office, and so on. And that is chaired by a chief inspector, and was done so on that occasion, and taking all the information from the different parties into account. It's ultimately the police that will generally make that decision, and it's made locally.
Okay, thank you. Is that you finished, Councillor Lubbock? Have you any more questions? Okay, thank you, Inspector Johnson. Councillor Colburn.
Thank you, Inspector Johnson. And firstly, I like the layout of the report. I thought it was really, really good, and personally, I think the right way to go. You'll not be surprised. I've got a few questions for you regarding the roads. It's disappointing to see the number of seatbelt incidents go up, and I know that we do a lot of education, but that is a real worry to me. Because of the experience of the road traffic officers that we have, do they report anything on the road that they think is a risk? For instance, the signage at the junctions we've got at Linwig and at Carbridge, if they think they're a risk, particularly for the nighttime patrols. I just wondered if there was a mechanism of reporting potential road things. I also welcome the Operation Cedar. I think the ethos and the thinking behind that is really good, and I would welcome an update on that at your next presentation, whenever that is. You highlighted, albeit that it's at lesser than some of our fellow communities, are shoplifting. have the shoplifting incidents been related to household poverty? I think that's quite an interesting and a thing that we need to possibly be aware of. I've only got 2 more quick points for you. You mentioned hate crime and the focus on that as well. I think that's a really important thing that we sometimes think we're immune to in our communities. And I know I've been told of a few incidents, particularly targeting guests in our communities and people from in our schools that are from different nationalities as well. And I think we've got a bit of local work that we need to be looking at that. And I also I'm delighted that we've got an HPO officer. I think that's really important, but wondered because it is only one officer, how we are benefiting in Badenoch and Strathspey, where we have got challenges as well. And I think for a future report, it would be quite nice to know how that officer's role has been embedded into the Highland Drug and Alcohol Partnership. But thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I will work through those. So mechanism for reporting road issues such as the Windmill Junction. Yeah, the Roads Police and Inspector has regular meetings with the Council and Scottish Government regarding particular issues, and I know there's been a huge amount of work undertaken over the last several years in terms of updating infrastructure and making our roads generally safer. I note the junction that you mentioned at Linwilg, there is very limited lighting there, and it at night, I think it probably does merit highlighting through the relevant agencies, and I will, after this meeting, get in touch with Inspector Donald McKinnon regarding that junction. I think you mentioned another junction, Councillor, that you were particularly concerned about.
Yes, it's the car bridge one where the whiskey lorries turned off. I've seen some quite frightening manoeuvres there.
Okay, I shall also highlight that and see what conversations have taken place, if any, about that junction, and ask him to have a review of that. They're always willing to look at junctions and feedback any information and thoughts to the Council and the Scottish Government. In respect of Cedar, yeah, I'll absolutely provide an update at the next presentation. And in respect of shopliftings, undoubtedly, cost of living has had an impact on the increase on those figures going up. It's actually Nairn is the other town that I mentioned where there's a shop there in particular which has got a significant problem with shopliftings, and it is undoubtedly cost of living related. As mentioned, we are not experiencing that issue to the same extent here in Badenoch and Strathspey, but it is still a factor at play. The hate crime, I think the figures are still relatively low compared to other areas for us in Badenoch and Strathspey. There are more instances falling on. There are more groups of people falling under that legislation, which accounts for an increase, which they wouldn't have previously fallen, or an offence wouldn't have been committed previously under that legislation. So that perhaps shows why there's a slight increase. But it is something that we, whenever there is a hate crime happens in any of our communities, it's highlighted to our senior management team, so they've got a overarching awareness of that crime, so that more focus and attention can be paid to it. It is treated very seriously. Every morning we have a meeting where all crimes of note are discussed with the senior management team. That is one of the categories of crime which is discussed at length every morning. And you mentioned the HPO officer, and yeah, I'll absolutely get a further breakdown for you of how they are impacting upon our area for the next presentation, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Inspector Johnson. I just had a couple of follow-up points, really, if that's okay. First of all, really pleased to hear about the drugs initiative that's coming forward in March, and thank you very much for taking that forward. And we look forward to hearing how that goes in the area. That's good news. Thank you. I would back up what Councillor Loban was saying about the speeding in towns. I think all of us probably get our ears bent quite a lot about people speeding through our villages and towns, and I know resources are tight and etc. but I don't know if it is possible to have some presence on some sort of irregular basis, and maybe just puts the thought on people's heads that they maybe have to adhere to these speed limits.
So I guess the first place to start, and perhaps I guess we'd all be in agreement that the most important time of day to ensure that these speed limits are enforced are probably school start, school end of day. And I'll speak to our roads policing colleagues about that, see if we can get additional presence. We've got a moving jigsaw where if we take away from one, there's so many demands in different areas, and that's what we're constantly trying to contend with. But I take on board that your comments, Chair, and Councillor Lobens, and I'll feed that back to see if we can get additional work undertaken at specific times. And unless you can feed me any other specific information about particular times, I think school start and end times would be a good place to start with that.
I think that's fair, Inspector. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. And we we totally appreciate budget pressures, etc. So but thank you. It's just two more quick points. Again, I just wondered. I used to drive snowplows in the A9 30 years ago, and it was quite a simple process when the gates were closed. The snowplow drivers liaised with the road supervisor, who liaised with the local police inspector, and the decision was made and the gates were closed. I just wonder, has it become a bit too complicated? I mean, you seem to be saying there was quite a lot of different agencies involved in a meeting that day, etc.
So any other day of the week, we would generally take the advice from the snowplow drivers. They're the experts. They know when a road can be cleared. They know when it can't. There was a gradual build-up of snow that day, and we got more snow at a lower level than was anticipated. And there was a few factors at play against this. Volume of traffic was definitely, there's pros and cons of having vehicles on the roads. And yeah, there is learning to be had. I will accept that for sure. I don't think the process was too clunky, because we would always, if a snowplow driver says that road needs to be closed, we will take their advice, because they know what they're capable of clearing or not. That information didn't come to us on this occasion. We had police on the ground, and it was felt that the traffic could continue. A problem can be that when one vehicle gets stuck by a less confident driver, that can have a knock-on effect, obviously, to everybody travelling behind it, and then that leads to a convoy being stuck. So it wasn't just straightforward one reason. The time of day perhaps was a factor, because through the night, when roads are often closed, there's less traffic on them, so there's less cars to be stuck. So just lots of different factors at play. But you're absolutely right. Generally, it would be snowplow drivers would say, let's get it closed, and that would happen. But it was felt at that time that it could continue.
Okay, Inspector, thank you. And just lastly, picking up Councillor Colburn's point there, I mean, I don't disagree with anything you're saying there, Muriel, about the junctions that you highlighted, but we actually have 4 junctions in Badenoch and Strathspey, or possibly 5, which are exactly the same. And I don't think we can just pick out 2 to say that they should be highlighted. So we've got Carbridge, and we've got Greenish, and we've got Linwelg, and we've got Relea, and we've got Dalwhinnie, and they're all exactly the same, where cars are turning right across traffic. I mean, Relea, now they're actually cutting the trees. At least the contractors have started there to try and make the sight lines better. But I think if we're going to highlight any of the junctions, it has to be all of them. If that's my opinion.
Absolutely, no problem at all.
Okay, thank you very much, Inspector. That's me. Councillor Bruce, have you anything you would like to ask Inspector Johnson? You're on mute, John.
Sorry, no, you covered all the points, especially these junctions.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, John.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Inspector Johnson. Sorry about having you in and having you out, having you back in again. Thank you very much for being with us. And I think your going to come and visit us at a ward meeting at some point. Hopefully, I think somebody was going to invite you to that. So that would be great to meet you in a more informal setting, possibly around the table. That would be great. Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 5 on the agenda. So it's the Area Roads Capital Programme, and I think Richard is here, and it's going to be introduced by Roads Manager Richard Porteous. Thank you, Richard. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, members. Yes, thank you. This is the annual roads maintenance programme report, detailing the proposed spend for the Area Roads Capital Programme. So the report itself details the mechanism for coming up with that allocation, which is a combination of data built up over the year and sense check by area engineers. So that's all detailed in the report. Of course, one of the biggest considerations is the budget itself. The more money in the budget, the larger the programme, and the more priorities we're able to address. So Appendix 1 shows last year's budget, because this year's budget isn't confirmed yet. And then the programme proposals in Appendix 2 take account of that. So basically they're prioritised. There's a line drawn across the table, which is the extent we would manage to achieve given the basic allocation that we've received over the last few years. The right hand column in Appendix 2 says estimated budget if 7.2 million. So 7.2 million is the basic Highland wide allocation. So the Badenoch and Strathspey allocation for that has been just under 500,000. You can see 474,000 in the bottom right hand corner of the table. So in that table, that's a total of the 379,750 at the top, which is the sum of the first 5 schemes, which would be achievable with that funding. And then there's a contingency built in as well for smaller schemes as well, because 474,000 doesn't go that far. We have to balance the priorities and the safety requirements across the area. So that is a summary of the report and Appendix 2. The specifics in Appendix 2 include a couple of sections that we didn't manage to complete last year because of timing issues, balancing access on the network with some of the larger events that were taking place in the area, such as the Harley Davidson event. So we shifted off that route last year to make sure there was no disruption there, and we treated as the next priority instead, which was the Balnan Road, which was discussed. And then so we will be revisiting that. So that's the one section on the A938, the B9007 top section, and the Loch and Dorb Road. So the additions this year are section on the B970 from Ruthven to Tromie, and the B9153 as well, from Kinbeckie to Carbridge. Okay, so maybe just pause there to answer any questions. I suppose the only other thing I could comment on generally is just a reminder that this is our capital funding. So we get £1 million in revenue funding, which is separate from this, which covers winter maintenance and road maintenance and cyclical works. Obviously, we've been kept busy with that recently. It's been an average winter so far, basically morning treatments averaging out every other day, and evening treatments 1 in 3 days. And we've had snowfalls, although nothing thankfully too prolonged or too deep, but we've had snowfalls in November, December and January, and we've had all these named storms coming through. So we've been dealing with the high winds and trees down, roads closed because of that. Various flooding events in October, December and February, and other project work out with the capital programme has been progressed. We had a strategic bridge closed, right, but we managed to get that open just before Christmas up at Dava, and the long-awaited improvements to the speed limit changes at Glenmore were also completed just before Christmas. And as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, all the 20 miles per hour speed limit reductions were introduced as well. So there's been a lot going on, and we look forward to next year with anticipation. As I said, it will depend on the funds that we get. So it has been a 400,000 basic allocation for quite some time, but thankfully for the last 3 years we've had a considerable uplift to that. So in the last 2 years it's more than doubled, and we've received just over 1 million, just under 1 million total each year for the last 2 years, which has been a very welcome, and we've managed to achieve significant surfacing repairs. And the year before that it was 700,000, so just around double what we had been getting previous to that. So that we've been very grateful for that, and we look forward to this year's budget with anticipation, and we'll see what we get. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Councillor Lobbin.
Richard, were there to be additional capital funding provided by the budget, will you just continue on down the list? Effectively, will you move the line, or will they come back to members for approval?
Sorry, just reminding myself. I think we would prefer to bring it toward business meeting, because a lot of these schemes below the line are. You can see there's large chunks of money there, because each there's an amalgamation there of scheme builder schemes from the Scottish Road Condition Survey. So those are all the main routes, and the significant works identified on each route. But you can see that it totals to something like 3 million. So with the best will in the world, it's highly unlikely that we'll get that. So it would make sense to try and spread what we do get, and there would be a requirement to do that to address the safety issues first. So we would have to try and spread that across the network. So we would then look at the detail within each of those routes, pick out the worst schemes, and draw up another mini programme and bring that back to members.
I'm happy with that. I've got one further question, Richard. Richard, is the winter maintenance budget sufficient for an area like Badenoch and Strathspey, which is obviously the coldest, snowiest and iciest part of the country?
Well, I would wasn't expecting that one, but it's always one has to be careful how we answer that, because it can be contentious. So our revenue budget is mutually exclusive. We have a total figure, and what we obviously a bottom line figure, and it's being spent on road maintenance in the summer and winter maintenance in the winter. So it tends to be that the longer winter you have, the more you spend on winter maintenance, the less opportunity you have to spend in the shorter summer, and so they can balance out. But that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. Obviously, a long winter, a hard winter, is very heavy on resource in terms of variable costs, use of materials, salt, and labour, overtime in particular, and wear and tear on the fleet and maintenance costs of that fleet. So that's your winter. In the summer, you've got similar variable costs, fuel, maintenance of the fleet, but your biggest variable cost is materials.
Do we ever underspend substantially?
Say again, sorry, Chair.
Do we ever underspend substantially?
Never, no. So we,
Thank you.
as far as I know, we're
That's a good
funded
question.
for an average winter, and it's tight at that. So really, an uplift to the revenue budget is what is required, as well as a capital uplift. That's the honest short answer.
Thanks, Richard. That answers my question. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you. Thanks, Richard, for the report. I noticed that you've itemised things like cattle grids. Are they not? Are they part of our responsibility? I'm surprised if they are, and I'd like a bit of explanation as to why they're not the landowner's responsibility. And the other thing was, do we get revenue from that's aggregated to our local roads area from our forestry transportation and our wind farm transportation? Do we get a pro rata from that as well? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Coburn. So cattle grids, once they're in the network, then they're adopted and become part of the road's maintenance responsibility. Wind farms and sorry, what was the other one? Wind farms and
Forestry.
Okay, yeah. So wind farms, we tend to use what's called a Section 96 agreement, for example, when a wind farm is being put in, where we monitor the condition of the road at the start of the project, and then we have a mechanism for claiming back at the end of the project due to exceptional wear and tear caused by the development. Or there could be a planning consent attached to that development, where they might have to invest in the public road leading to their access road, if it's going to be significant detriment, or if there's going to be safety issues and requiring that investment. You know, more or larger passing places, for example, to allow construction vehicles to pass on the road. So that was wind farms. Forestry, the same can apply, does apply for forestry extraction when we're dealing with harvesting operations, and so there's a requirement for them to consult on virtually every road in Badenoch and Strathspey before you get to the main road. And we tend to work with the extraction companies and agree upfront any issues that are required to be resolved, be it safety at sight lines at junctions, or where the traffic is threatening the condition of the road edge, breaking up the road edge where they're coming on and off the road. There might be junction improvements or road edge improvements required where their junctions come onto our roads, that sort of thing. There's obviously on a wider scale, there's the Scottish Timber Transport Scheme, which I don't know if we want me to answer that or to tell you a bit more about that. I could do, because that's something that's been raised before regarding Badenoch and Strathspey. But so I thought hopefully that answers your question there. In the meantime.
Okay, thank you. Lewis, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a point of clarity really in respect to that mention of the ward business meetings that Richard made there. If there is additional capital budget made available to the area in addition to that 474,000, if there is an area member decision required in terms of how that would be spent, it would need to come back to area committee rather than ward business meeting. So the options, Richard, would be that you could maybe invite members to express a kind of ranking preference in terms of the other priority roads listed at Appendix 2, unless, of course, you were just intending to bring something to the members for noting rather than for decision, in which case it could come toward business meeting. But really just a point of clarity there in terms of that reference to the ward business meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. I can come back. Sorry, Russell.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I'll just let Councillor Loveland come in there. I think it's possibly on the same point.
Lewis, could we not have these discussions at ward business meeting, make the decision at ward business meeting, and then homologate it at the next area committee?
Could do it that way, provided we homologated the area committee. The following area committee would be early June, so yeah, that would be an option.
Richard?
Yeah, just maybe I could sort of simplify as well the thought process there, because these are the priorities which we're agreeing today. So it's just a question of actually highlighting the sections on there that we would be addressing if we get additional funding. So it's really just for noting at ward business meeting.
Councillor Coburn, would you like to come back in?
Yes, I might. Thank you, Chair. I might as well. My concern about I don't see anything highlighted for all the junctions in Badenoch and Strathspey road improvement. I don't see anything in that in your programme. Is that on your radar?
Yes. So some of the sections that are contained within these priorities will include junctions. Yeah. It's just to confirm that. Thanks. And also some of the smaller schemes include junctions, and also a lot of the cyclical work that we'll be doing under the revenue programme will include junctions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Richard, I did a couple of things. You did mention the timber transport scheme there before, and I think I mentioned it a couple of times about the B970, which I'm certain is the most heavily trafficked road by timber lorries in our area, the whole length of it. And I do wonder whether you guys could put some sort of project together, you know, to look at the B970 and then put that to the timber transport fund, because you know, personally it's good business and I'm delighted that we have timber lorries using it, and there's a lot of timber to be extracted over the next few months and years because of the recent storms as well. So it might not be a bad time to do that. And you know, if there was a wee survey done, and it's not anything specific, but I mean the road is not particularly wide, and a lot of the verges are getting pushed back, and there's big holes at the side of the road, and you know, Tromie Bridge, etc. You know, so there are quite a few places that could do have been surveyed. Would that be a possibility to put some sort of project together for the B970 and then put it to the Timber Transport Fund? And also a second thing I had was just on Muriel's point about white lining there. We received an email from Bear the other day to say that they're going to be white lining Canusie High Street at the end of February. And we had a chat recently about, you know, cross-agency working, etc. You know, is it possible to get them to do the junctions in Canusie High Street when they're doing the junctions off Canusie High Street when they're doing the High Street? We had that slight misstep last year when the junctions weren't done. So is that a possibility when they've got white liners on site anyway? Would that be cheaper all round? Or, but anyway, it was just to make you aware that that's happening. I'm pretty sure it's the end of February they're doing it.
Thank you, Chair. We'll take that on board. Thank you for highlighting that. So we'll get in touch with Bear and see what opportunity we can get there. In terms of the STTS scheme, yes, you know, we will take that away. Your points there about the width of the road and the condition of the edges is significant, because that is one of the main considerations when it comes to the STTS review panel. Basically, we work with the Highland Timber Transport Group, we the Highland Council, to put together the bids, and then they're considered by the review panel, the national review panel. This year, every year the 21st of March is the deadline, so that obviously is too close for the B970 for this year. But then that gives us a year to look at it for next year and perhaps get a bid put together. But there's caveats attached to that, all over loads of caveats. Obviously, it's the successful bids. It's all about road condition. It's about tonnage of timber coming out, and it's about partnerships and funding as well. So it depends on partners funding and as well as the council funding for a bid to be successful. There's 2 parties only on that road. FLS take timber out south of Feshy Bridge, and then there's the other estate takes timber out to the north. And so trying to get a good contact to have that discussion with the estate taking timber out to the north has been very difficult. They've had a change actually as well in personnel just recently, so we're hopeful that that might be more fruitful in the future. So these are all the considerations when a bid is put together. And also the worry this year is that the council fund for council element of the partnership funding is reduced this year. Oh, obviously we don't know what the budget is, but we're worried that there will be a reduction in the amount available, and therefore the number of schemes will be reduced, and therefore the B970 would be competing with other bids around the Highlands. And the thing about the B970 is, apart from the width in places and some of the edge conditions, it generally, obviously we'll do a thorough review, and if there is an opportunity for a case, we'll make it. But it's competing against single track roads that are in terrible condition in far-flung corners of the Highlands, and sometimes it's hard to compete if you've got a generally sound road on gravel conditions as opposed to peat conditions. So that's why it hasn't been successful in the past. It's unfortunately, I think the last time we did get a significant amount of money from that scheme towards the Ruthven Bridge upgrade. So that was a tremendous boost at the time. But since then, it hasn't been at the top of the priority list because of these other factors. So, but it's an opportunity to have a fresh look at it. And I was speaking to the representative in the Highland Timber Transport Group, so he's got that message loud and clear. So with the new year ahead of us, we can have a fresh look at things.
Okay, Richard, thanks. Yeah, the FLS actually take out timber north of Feshy Bridge as well from Inshreer Forest, so that's their instructions. You can't cross Feshy Bridge, so then you go back to Rothie Markers. And I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, obviously it will be competing, but if it was possible to make a bid, then that would be great. So thank you for that. Is there any questions from Councillor Lobb, Councillor Coburn, anything else? Okay, in that case, thank you very much, Richard. Do we have? Are we noting this report, Lewis?
I don't have the recommendations in front of me. Richard, what's the
approval? Hoping that you would agree the priority list as I set out in Appendix 2. Thanks.
2.1 is up for approval.
Are we happy to approve, members? Okay, that's all yeses. All right,
and you're leaving us, Richard. You're abandoning us and heading off to sail the 7 seas, I believe, as in the Corran Ferry.
Yeah, that's mixed emotions, of course. I'll just be on the end of the phone.
Best
I'm not leaving. Yeah, thank you for all your support, and it's been a pleasure. And I know you'll give that support to those that remain as the roads team. And John here today, who you know very well. Anyway, so there should be no concerns there.
Yes, good luck, Richard, and thank you very much. And no doubt we'll see you very soon.
Look forward to seeing you around. Thank you.
Cheers. Item number 6, members, is well, thank you, John, as well. Sorry if you were going to thank you very much for being in today. Apologies I didn't introduce you earlier and say hello. Thank you very much for coming in today. I think you're on mute, John.
The only thing I would say is, having dealt with these sort of reports in other areas, well, Inverness area, it's quite important that approval is given by yourself to the priority order for these, because we have to programme in these works, and we want to give 3 months notice. So the requirement that Lewis has pointed out of going back to ward business meetings or directly to committee, certainly ward business meetings is easier, but I'm appreciative that you've agreed the priority for below the line as well, because if the money becomes available, we need to do immediate notification on Scottish Roadworks Register, which means that utilities won't be digging up. They get the 3 month notice period. So if you were waiting to a July committee, you couldn't do the noticing till after July. So that could be September before you're doing the work. And really, that's not going to be a possibility. So I'm appreciative that the priority order has been agreed for above and below the line. So that's good. Thank you. I look forward to working with all the Badenoch and Strathspey members and my colleague Stevie as well. So Stevie and myself are covering the roads manager jobs at the moment.
You might regret saying that, John.
Well, that's why I'm pointing out Stevie's available. Stephen Grant's the name.
Okay, John, thank you very much. Thank you very much today.
members.
We'll see you soon.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Item number 6, members' ward discretionary budget. We're invited to note that awards have been made to Newtonmore Business Association and Canusie Parish Church. Newtonmore Business Association £750, I think, for consultancy for the Centenary Garden, and Canusie Parish Church £2,000 for winter jackets and waterproof shoes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very brief point, just to say that we've got just over £3,500 remaining in the ward discretionary fund that's uncommitted. I'm conscious that the end of the financial year is fast approaching. So if you have any community groups that you're working with, members who you think would be potential applicants, then please do encourage them to get in touch with me, and I'll help them to get through an application process. Thank you.
Councillor Lovin.
Lewis, did we get any further with the idea that we were trying to encourage someone at the north end of the community to set up something similar?
Thank you. Yes, I did reach out to education colleagues, and I'm still trying to identify a delivery partner in that part of the area that could pick this up. So I've stressed to education colleagues that, yeah, it's something that we'd like to progress, and they're trying to find somebody that can take it forward.
Would VABs not be the ideal people to assist and point us in the right direction?
I did contact them on it, but I'll go back to them and try again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lewis. Item number 7, minutes. There are circulated minutes of the meeting of Badenoch and Strathspey Area Committee on the 13th November 2023, which were approved by the Council on 14th of December 2023. And I think that brings us to a close, members.